I was always kind of skeptical of like the quote unquote they're on our side now. Not
Right.
you were saying that or whatever, just in general, kind of the general consensus was, right? That like, oh, this time they can't argue against it. I never really bought that, man, because again, these people all have their own angles and their own agendas that they're trying to push. And these people don't value black lives. They don't value people of color in at all. Not saying all of them, but a lot of them.
Yeah.
And you know what? I'm not even going to say that anymore. I'm not going to say, oh, it's not all of them anymore. If you honestly sit there and even try to rationalize this or try to rationalize this killing or try to rationalize anything that Derek Chauvin was doing or acting like, then you don't care about black lives. You don't care about people of color. You
It's
just
just
don't.
yeah. There's just no other way around
It's
it.
like
There's no way around it. Yeah.
how do you square that anymore? Right?
You
Like if you
can't.
could literally sit there and say, yeah, but there's no yeah, but there isn't. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? And it's like I just never really bought it because I knew that there was a video. It well, the pandemic. I really feel like a lot of what happened last year was the pandemic. I think there was a unique moment in the history of our country where literally everybody was home, everybody was bored as shit, and just was feeling some type of way. And then you see this happen, right? We're having a shitty year as it is, and then you see this happen. And I just feel like even if you wanted to say something, like even if you are the most staunchly conservative asshole out there, even you couldn't like I'll keep my mouth shut, right?
Well, yeah. Yeah.
You know, and then of course the riots and everything comes after that, and then it's like that kind of gives them cover to be like, oh, well, see, this is why we don't support BLM because
Right.
they're all a bunch of terrorists and Antifa and yada yada yada,
Right.
and see, they're tearing up their own communities, all the bullshit that you, me,
Right.
everybody that's listening has heard for since the beginning of time when it comes to this shit. So I never really bought it, man. I never really bought it. I never really bought that this was going to change public sentiment because again, people have agendas. People don't. It's hard for people in this country, white people, and I don't even want to say white people because there's a lot of we've talked about it on the show,
It's everybody.
Hispanics,
It's
Asians,
everybody.
a lot of it. It's a segment. No, there's even black people
Yeah. That's what it's
that
everybody.
feel like nah, like this is just a media narrative that police officers aren't killing people, yada yada yada. And it's like if you're just, but I'm specifically focusing this on the now non-black people. Like if you just can't empathize with this shit that's going on, then like when are you ever right? Like if Trayvon Martin didn't do
That's
it
how I
for you,
feel. Yeah.
if Tamir Rice didn't do it for you, George Floyd's not going to do it for you.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
Lakia Bryant isn't going to do it for you.
Right.
Duante Wright isn't gonna do it for you. Like
Yeah.
no one's gonna do it. Alton start like
But
all the names.
this one was in particular though, because like in a lot of the other cases, it's like, well, one was running, one was resisting, one was like, you know what I mean? George Floyd literally like was as helpless as a victim as you could possibly have. And then also, during the protest and when all that happened, like you're right, we're in a unique spot in history. And I remember a lot of my conservative friends or a lot of like my centrist friends being like, okay, like I've come around to it. Like
Mhm.
I've had that, a lot of my especially centrist friends be like, I understand like why you're protesting back in 2016,
Mhm.
2015 when Eric Gardner was murdered. Like I had a lot of centrist friends come my way and say that. So for me, now all of a sudden this verdict is happening and these people who are right leaning who are all blue lives matter all of a sudden Derek Chauvin went from he doesn't represent us to, oh well, George Floyd did have something in his system, or
As if like that justifies
yeah,
him
and
dying,
I
right?
I just think that like I think I get my hopes up all the time, where it's just kind of like I really want us as a country to come to an understanding with a lot of different things, and this case in particular just made me realize like if we can't come to an understanding with it, like if Candace Owens and Tommy Lauren and Ben Shapiro and Tucker Carlson are going off the deep end because of this case and people are following them off the deep end, we are lost.
But they're just taking, but they're
Yeah.
just doing, they're just feeding red meat to an audience of just hungry savages. Like
Yeah,
I don't
but
even feel like you know what, like I don't even feel like these conservatives even believe this shit. Like I don't even I deep down don't believe that Candace always believes this shit, but I
oh,
think that
Candace doesn't. No, she
she
doesn't. Candace is a
doesn't. But
grifter.
she's
But
phony. She's a
the
fake.
audience does though. That's
Yeah,
what I'm
the
saying.
audience
There's
does,
a
and we've
big enough
established that.
audience.
Yeah, we've established
There's
that
a
though.
big enough audience to do that. Like there's a big enough
Right.
audience to give red meat to.
And
And
that's
I
what I
don't know.
mean
Like
though.
I
That's
was
what I
really
mean that they all
hopeful.
have agendas though. That's what I
Yeah,
mean. They
and
all have agendas.
like I was really hopeful we could have a conversation like with a cop who'd be like, you know what, that cop doesn't represent me, but okay, here's my perspective on certain things, and maybe you can come around to mine, like, and have like a legit discussion. Like a cop maybe being like, maybe we are disproportionately killing black lives, but our job is made harder. This is how our job can be. Like
Mm-hmm.
I want that discussion. George Floyd seemed like it could have been that discussion, and then all of a sudden, a year later, all the conservatives that I knew who, said that this guy doesn't represent cops were either incredibly silent during the sentencing, or all of a sudden were like, George Floyd had something in his body. I'm not really sure. You know what I mean? And then
And again, it's
so I just
it just bothers me
I
because
just lost hope, like trying to convince people. Like in my head now, like I'm not even bothering debating people about this anymore. Like I know what I believe.
oh yeah,
I'm gonna push
I
forward
don't.
with the agendas that I want to push forward. I'm gonna advocate for what I want to advocate. But as far as like trying to have conversations with my centrist and Republican friends about this stuff, I'm not gonna argue with you. I'm not gonna be mean to you, but I'm just not gonna have the conversations with you anymore. I'm done.
Yeah, no, I feel you, man. Honestly, I'm done trying to change people's lives again, or trying to change people's minds. Like if again, there isn't a different. This isn't a difference of opinion. Like if you don't believe my life matters, the people that
Right.
look like me lives matter, or my son someday his life may not matter to you, then we don't have anything to talk about. Like there's just literally nothing to talk about. We can have a disagreement on Medicare for all. We can have a disagreement on trickle down economics. We can have a disagreement on climate change. We can have an disagreement on almost anything except this.
Right.
Like this just doesn't do it for me, right? Like if you don't believe my life matters, if my rights matter, if you see me as 3/5 of a man, whatever, there's nothing else to talk about. You know
And
what I'm saying? Like that, and
yeah.
that's what and they don't understand that. Like we
Right.
feel this way.
No,
Like
I
there's
get
just
it.
nothing. Because how do I sit down and find quote unquote common ground
There's
or
none.
see the other side?
There's none. Like
There
even if
isn't.
I would have loved if someone was just like, "Hey, listen, I'm conservative. I support the police, but this murder was bullshit." The Tucker Carlsons of the world, they're like, acknowledge what that media is trying to do. Say you don't agree with it, and then say, "Hey, listen, I don't agree with everything that Black Lives Matter, but we can come to the table and have a discussion." But like, I would have been fine with that. We didn't even get that. Like, I didn't even get that. Like, there was none of that. It was just straight back to the either silence, which
Yeah.
basically to me is
Yeah,
you're
which is
complicit.
compliance. It's like
Yeah.
it's
So
you're complicit
right.
in the situation, right?
Right. So it's either that or it's, oh, he had something in his system. Oh,
Which is again, which
yeah.
bothers me because I hate that like that false equivalence, right? Like where, this justifies this. No, it does not. Again,
Right.
George Floyd could have literally had a fucking barrel of fentanyl in his fucking system.
Right.
Who gives a shit? He did not deserve to die,
Yeah.
and specifically die in that manner.
Yeah. So
He just didn't.
yeah.
I
He
don't
didn't.
care. Like it's and again, it's always, oh well he resisted or he ran. Tamir Rice. Tamir Rice was a 14-year-old little boy that was playing with a toy fucking
12.
gun.
12-year-old.
12-year-old, 14-year-old, a
There's
little
a big
fucking
difference
boy
between, but yeah. 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 It's
that was
disgusting.
playing with a toy gun. And
And
he lost his life. And people still was like, well, where were the parents? Why did he have this gun? No.
and for those of you who don't know the Tamir Rice situation, it wasn't like the cops got there and there was a standoff with a kid. The video is horrible, so you don't have to look it up, but I'm going to tell you what it is. The kid was literally on the sidewalk with the toy gun just walking, and the cop car drove like full speed ahead, stopped right in front of him, hit the brakes, and shot him. Like, it wasn't even like they approached him slowly. Like, it was just literally
Yeah.
like, it was almost like a cartoon where it's just like, and killed the kid, a 12-year-old kid with a toy gun. Like,
That's,
even if the kid had I'm not even, I'm not even justify it because if
no, there's no justifying it, man.
yeah, I just at
Again,
this point,
we've talked
if
about
you
this.
don't see what's wrong with that, I don't have anything to say to you anymore.
We talked about this many times on this show, right? It's like there's no justifying this stuff anymore, man. There just isn't.
Yeah,
There isn't. Again, a 12-year-old boy lost his life for nothing. George Floyd, okay, may have had a counterfeit bill, whatever. He was unarmed. He wasn't a danger to anybody else. There was like 5 other officers on the scene.
Right.
He had to die.
Right.
He literally had to lose his life.
Yeah.
Like,
it was disgusting.
And I hate this narrative of like, oh, cops have a fucking hard job or whatever. Like, oh, so do dentists. Dentists have hard jobs too. Right. Podcasters have hard jobs. Fucking teachers have hard jobs. fucking,
Heart surgeons, nurses.
construction workers have hard
Yeah.
jobs. Like a lot of people have hard jobs. That doesn't justify you killing people.
Right.
Like if fucking dentists were going out here just committing malpractice and just killing people, literally just killing people on the chair, we would literally be like, yo, fuck the dentist. This shit needs to stop. And like, I think everybody in unison would be like, yeah, this is fucked up. That dentists are actually going out here killing people. Not
Right.
like, oh, well, he had a cavity and then the dentist didn't know what to do. And like, what the fuck? Like, what? Or like, oh, well, they made him open a practice in the hood and maybe he felt uncomfortable. Like, no, like trying to justify like you being bad at your job. Like it's just beyond me. It really is. It's like there's just like how do you sit there? And I'm using Tamir Rice because again he's a child, so it's for a fact. But any of this shit, Alton Sterling, Michael Brown, like any of this stuff, like how do you continuously and I'm talking to the people on the right, people in the center, like how do you continuously justify this? And I tell people when I used to have debates about this, I'm like, George Floyd was somebody's father, somebody's son. How do you sit there and talk to these people's family and say, you know what? Yeah, sorry. Whoops, our bad. Like, how do you like? I can't even put myself in the zone to be Tamir Rice's parents. Like, I can't. And again, it hits me hard because again, I have a child. I have kids now, so it heightens this to the ultimate degree for me, right? Like, I can't even sit there and even try to think how I would rationalize having someone sit across me and tell me, yeah, you lost your son because he had a toy gun. Like, how?
And then
how do you even justify
to see the footage of it
and seeing the footage of it, and then this going to trial, these police officers getting off, and you have people in the media, people on the right, center, whatever, justifying it. Oh, well, this or oh, cops have hard jobs. Who gives a fuck? Again, construction workers have hard jobs. Right. Also, it doesn't mean they should not finish the roads correctly so people could crash and die. Like it doesn't. And then it's stupid.
Yeah. And then even if you're the one person who believes in due process, like for instance, in the Tamir Rice case, the U.S. Justice Department didn't even want to hear the case. Like that, that's another thing that's just like so infuriating, where it's just kind of like, well, if you believe in due process, if you believe in certain things, like that, like we're not even getting that far.
Right.
But I think for me, I've really have for the past maybe few months or so been trying to understand the conservative mindset, and just because I feel like we're different people sometimes. And I've come to the conclusion that we really are. Like, I think conservatives really, they value law and order. They value order. They value a set of rules. And if you
which is bullshit.
I know, I'm sorry. But like there's consequences, right? So like for them, it's like there's a cop in my head, in my mind, I used to think that cops became the good cops became cops because they wanted to make a difference in the community. The good cops don't join the force to make a difference in the community. They join the force to keep order within the community. That in a conservative's mind, that's what a good deed is. See, as liberals, as progressives, for us, we value change. We fight for what's right. If something is wrong, we try to fix it. We advocate for what's right. In a conservative's mind, what's right is following the rules, following basic order. And if you stray from that, there's going to be consequences. Our job is not to dictate what's right and what's wrong. Our job is to be told what's right and what's wrong. And if you violate what's right or what's wrong, there's consequences to be paid.
And even that is bullshit to me, because it's like they value law and order. And what's that?
I disagree with it completely. Yeah.
No, I know you do. I'm just saying, even that, I'm talking to the conservatives.
Yeah.
Even that is bullshit, because they value law and order, but yet January 6th happens, right? Which is literally like the most heinous shit you can do beyond maybe like killing people, right? It's just like literally planning an insurrection and a coup of your government. Like
it's the worst domestic terrorism act that we've had in our country.
Right. Like they value law and order. They value law and order, but they're the first ones to, attack a cop if a cop tries to arrest them.
Kill the fucking cop.
They're the first, right? Or they're the first ones to plan an insurrection, or they're the first ones to, basically go ape shit when something doesn't go their way.
Right.
So it's like, it's bullshit. All of this is bullshit. I'm sorry.
No, I agree. I think it's a bunch.
They're phonies.
And I said this.
They just don't care about black people. Let's just call it like it is. They don't give a shit about black people. That's what it is. If it was blonde, I've said this before in private, and I'm saying it on air. If it was a bunch of blonde fucking women across this country getting shot by the police would be abolished tomorrow. If literally blonde women were out in these streets getting pulled over, held at gunpoint at a grocery store, whatever, and lives were lost and it was blonde-haired white women, police officers would not exist. They wouldn't. It would take 5. Wouldn't you take 5? It would take 2, and they would abolish police nationwide.
No, I agree.
They don't give a fuck about black people. Like, let's just be real. Like, they don't care
No,
about black
I agree.
people, bro.
Listen,
they don't care. They don't give a shit.
They don't. They don't. And I agree with you on that. And my thing is, like, I'm past that point where at the point where it's like I told you, I don't want to debate anymore. I don't want to argue with these people anymore. But what I do want to try to understand them. And what I'm coming to realize is that we literally, like, I used to look at conservatives and I used to look at Republicans as like people who we kind of shared the same values. It's just that they didn't have the same information as I do. So therefore they couldn't come to the same conclusions as I did. But if I kept giving them the information, that eventually they would figure it out and be like, and they would be liberal or they would be more progressive. That's not the case. They look at the world completely differently than we do. We can give them all the information we want. We can show them stats. We can show them studies. We can show them everything. But the way that they interpret information and the way they look at the world is completely different than the way that we do. And I don't know how to reach someone who sees things more black and white than a bunch of nuance and gray area. Unfortunately.
I don't know how to reach someone, and I'm not trying to, because again, this is not a situation where I'm trying to convince anybody. If you can't, and again, it's just basic human empathy. Like, I've never known a Native American person, to my knowledge, right? Like, I'm sure I've interacted with folks that I didn't know were natives or whatever. No, I have. Correction. I stand corrected on that. Like, I have, but I've never like actually had like a close relationship with someone that was native or whatever. Like, I'm not talking about like, oh, I have like 1/8 native, like true Native American people. I don't know anybody or I haven't really close relationship or close ties with anybody that's Native American, right? If suddenly a report came out that Native Americans were being slaughtered by the police nationwide, just basic human empathy would just like, damn, that's fucked up. Like, damn, that's not right. We should do something about that. I don't care what the circumstances are. That's not right. When Asian people, that was recently in the news, I said the same thing. That's fucked up, because injustice somewhere is an injustice anywhere, right? It doesn't matter who it happens to. It doesn't happen if you're white, black, blue, gray. It doesn't matter, right? And it's like, it's just basic human empathy. Like, if you can't even just sit there and understand, how do you even have a conversation with these people? Like, how? I don't because know. If you can't even sit there and if you can't even understand that, like, this is just basic human empathy. Like, George Floyd, it doesn't even matter that he's black. But George Floyd could have been your cousin. He could have been your uncle. He could have been your brother, son, whatever. To me,
not
right,
theirs. But not theirs. The cop could have been their brother. The cop,
right, exactly, because they don't care about black people. They don't care. They can't. They don't care. They say they do. They think they do. They don't give a shit about black people. They don't. They don't care about people of that skin color. They just don't. They don't care.
Yeah,
it's obvious now.
Yeah,
like,
it's obvious.
That's what,
and it's also
and
just,
you know what? And the thing that pisses me off is just be honest. Just be real. Say, you know what? I don't like black people.
Right.
I think they should all die.
Yeah.
And I would at least respect it that you're honest. But when you sit there and you try to make it,
or just say I can't empathize with them. Like, for some reason, I see myself as the cop rather than the black person. Right. Just say something like that.
If you would say that, I would say, you know what? It's still shitty, and I can't stand you, and you're a piece of shit. But I would at least respect you for being honest. But when you sit there and make it, oh, well, we're about law and order, but yet you support January 6th, or, oh, we're about law and order, but, you know, you're the first one to pack heat when some shit doesn't go your way. Like, I'm sorry.
But my thing is, like, with conservatives, you ever realize, like, they don't have solutions for anything? Like,
no,
and this,
no,
but this
they
is,
don't.
but this is what I was speaking to, like, conservative mindset, right? So it's kind of like, well, how do you fix certain problems, right? How do you fix the gun culture in America, right? Like, how do you, on one hand, say that cops have a difficult job because they're afraid that, you know, someone they're pulling over might have a gun, and then advocate for everyone in the country to have a fucking gun? Like, that's literally
exactly.
That's like
exactly.
So you're saying that a cop's job is hard because when they pull someone over, they don't know if they have a weapon, yet you want everybody in the country to have a weapon.
Right.
So now you want everybody to think of a cop. So wherever you go,
right.
Now you have to assume that everybody has a weapon. Like, their logic is, I've been saying this, like, for a long time, and I really do think this. I think there are just a lot of conservatives are conservatives because they don't logically think their arguments through. And I think you see a lot of people go from conservative to liberal because they start actually thinking for themselves, and they take that next step, and they take back that layer. And they might see something like George Floyd and say, like, damn, like maybe the people I vote for really don't care about black people. And they start asking questions why. Because to me, if you keep pulling back layers in this country, at least, there's just no way logically you could be conservative, because none of their arguments make any sense. Then on top of that, they don't really push for any policies. And that's what I was saying before, where it's like, if you're a conservative in this country, you're fine with the party doesn't push any policies because you're fine with order. That's all you care about is order. You don't want to mess up the order. Why would I want different policies? Why would I want policy when all I want is the status quo? And that goes back to our argument, where it's just kind of like, well, if we show these conservatives, or this person from Nebraska, hey, this is Medicare for all. Like, don't you want this? Don't you want this? I don't think we can change their minds, because I don't think they think in the same way that we do.